Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and today I'm joined by Michael from the RPG Academy. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well. Very well. Thank you.
It's great to have you on. It's been a while since we hung out, several years actually.
Yes.
I think we've run into each other at conventions and stuff, but in the before times.
Yeah. In the long, long ago.
Yeah. So, you have a podcast that's been around for quite some time, and
Yes. We're closing it on 9 years.
you run a convention. You got some things going on. So, for people that aren't familiar with you, kind of like where can they find you and what do you do?
Sure. The RPG Academy is the name of the podcast, and pretty much all of our social medias that we are active on is there. I'm most active on Twitter. So if you do want to hang out with me, talk to me, ask me questions, that's the easiest place to find. We started a podcast maybe even over 9 years ago at this point. It's around there. And it originally was just me and a buddy. He had never played D&D before, and I kind of got him into it. And he wanted to become a DM. And he had started listening to some other podcasts, particularly Fear the Boot, I believe, trying to help him learn how to become a DM. And it was his idea. He's like, why don't we record you trying to help me learn to be a DM? And that's kind of where the podcast was born. After a year or so, he ended up leaving. Life got in the way. I brought on a different co-host, Caleb. He was my co-host for several years, and then life got in the way and he left. And we're kind of in this weird state right now where we have so many different shows. We do review shows, we do interview shows, we do GM theory shows, we do live plays. So I've got different people who are helping with different aspects of the show at this point. And then we grew a convention out of our podcast, which has a terrible name. It's called AcadeCon. No one gets it right. Everyone thinks it's AcadeCon, so I think it's video games.
They're so disappointed when they get there and there's not a single Pac-Man.
Exactly. There's no there's no Galaga. Like, what, they're flipping tables. Like, what is this? But it's supposed to be RPG Academy plus convention, shortened to AcadeCon or AcadeCon. But it's a terrible name. But I kind of have stuck with it at this point. Now it's just a point of pride. I'm just not going to change it, even though I probably should. So those are probably the two biggest things that people might have heard about what we do or be involved. And then kind of the biggest news for me is actually I'm planning, fingers crossed, to launch a Kickstarter early next year for a game I'm developing called Action 12 Cinema, which is a very high improv rules-light game about recreating stories from bad movies I used to love as a kid, like Call the Conqueror, Our Quartermain and the Lost City of Gold, The Last Starfighter. So these are not Conan and Indiana Jones movies. These are the really bad TBS WGN movies I watched.
Beastmaster.
Beastmaster. Oh yeah, absolutely. So if things go well, there's going to be a Kickstarter for that early next year. So I got a lot of little projects and fingers and pies, irons in the fire, whatever
those bad movies from the 80s, like that's my bread and butter. Yeah.
Oh,
like, these kids today don't even know how spoiled they are.
They don't know what
even though bad movies are really good.
Do you ever watch a movie called Stuff? It was like The Blob, but they made it into a yogurt. There's like this huge government conspiracy.
Oh my God. I don't know if I have. It sounds vaguely familiar.
It's basically The Blob, but it's called Stuff. It's terrible, but I love that movie so much.
Yeah. I mean, so I just watched a movie the other night, and I won't say what it is, but the actor's kind of like active in D&D. So it's like, all right, let me check this out. And it's like, it wasn't a good movie, and I just couldn't, and I still can't figure out why it wasn't. Right? I'm like, was it the script? I'm like, the script could have been much worse. Was it the acting? Like, there were some bad actors, but they weren't all bad. And then it's like, is it the production? Maybe it's the production, or maybe it's all these like little things that were just sitting just beneath, right? But it's like it was almost a good movie. And now it's like we're all home, so the movie theaters aren't a thing. So I don't feel bad. I just spent like $6, and
Yeah, I went back and was looking at what movie, because I'm a big movie guy, anyways. Like movies are a big part of my life, always have been. And I was like, what was the last movie I saw in the theater? And it was Underwater, which is basically it's like an Alien or Aliens ripoff, but it's like an underwater. So it's like also an Abyss, or was it Deep 6 or something, and it had Kristen Stewart in it, and it was okay. It wasn't great, but I remember I was in the theater completely by myself. Like
Yeah.
there was no one else in there, so it's almost like I had a private screening for like $8. I live in Kentucky now, and we have crappy theaters, but they're cheap. And I'm like, if that's the last movie I ever get to see in a theater,
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah.
That's so bad. Part of me is kind of like, I'm kind of excited because I was like, oh, I think Wonder Woman comes out Christmas Day. I'll probably be able to watch it at home.
Yep.
And I mean, it's not as good as the theater experience, but still.
I'm very excited about that. And I think like when Mulan came out on Disney Plus, I was one of the people that was kind of vocal on Twitter. Like, I hope this goes great. I hope 1 million people pay $30 to see Mulan because I want to be able to watch Black Widow. And I would pay $50 to see Black Widow today. It doesn't bother me. A lot of people were upset that Disney was charging more money. Like, I don't care. It's their thing. If they want to sell it to me, I don't have to buy it, but I would pay $50 today to see Black Widow at home if I could.
Yeah. So $20 is like $19.99. I don't have to think about it. I'll drop that without thinking. Once you get one penny over $19.99, and then I'll start weighing whether I want to watch it.
Right. Or not. Yeah, don't get me wrong. $50 is a lot, but like my whole argument again is I have 2 kids, and I take them to see the movies, and I have the wife. So either I got to pay for a babysitter, or I'm taking the whole family.
Well, so going to the movies for a family of 4 is like $200. If you go to dinner and the movie, it's $200.
Yeah,
at least.
And you're gonna again. If I take my kids, we're getting popcorn, we're getting sodas, we're getting candy. So yeah, I get to see because I love movie experience. I don't want movies to go away. Yeah. But to say that me dropping $50 at home is extravagant it's cheaper. It's cheaper for me to do that than it would be to take my whole family to see that.
And generally you can watch it a bunch of times if you really want to, like for like a couple days.
And if you do have to pause it to go pee, you can do that, Yeah. So I want to go back to movie theaters. I live for those Marvel movies these days, but if you consider we've been in quarantine for like 9 months now, if you can let me watch Black Widow at home, I will gladly pay. Disney, if you're listening, I will pay you $50 to watch Black Widow today.
Yeah, so our one player is an ER doctor, and so obviously we've been playing virtually. So his ticket finally got punched, and he finally got the vid, and he's like, so he's okay, and he's over, and he doesn't have to get hospitalized or anything. But his sense of taste and smell have still not come back, so he can't taste anything, he can't smell anything, and he's like, he had to lock himself in one room of the house the whole time, and then it's like, when he was going outside just to get some fresh air, he's like, he has to call the family so they can clear the way.
Oh, wow. That's scary though. I mean, again, the people talk about the mortality rate of this is pretty low, but there's a lot of other factors that go into that. And just having to be quarantined from your family, the fear and anxiety of that is.
Well, we don't know what the long lasting effects are going to be. And they're already figuring out some of them are bad. Right. So it's not really something to play with, but hopefully they finally give us some good drugs next year and we can all hang out at cons again someday.
Yeah, we had to. Well, we moved AcadeCon to virtual this year. We had done a couple mini virtual cons before, just to like kind of promote AcadeCon and fundraise, but they were all like maybe 20 people. This year was by far our biggest. We had like 150 people participate. But we are hopeful that next year, because our convention's in November, so we pretty much have almost all of 2021. We're really hopeful that by November of next year, we'll be able to have a AcadeCon in person again. And I just want to mention Shallendor says they love the stuff. So great taste in movies there.
We were supposed to have our first convention this year.
We talked about that. We got on a call. You guys had some questions for me about mine, and I don't know that I helped, but so I guess that didn't happen because of COVID.
Yeah, Halloween weekend, and it's like, so we're still like trying to get our deposit back, and it's seeing what's going on with that, and it's just tough. It's tough all the way around. And like we had such a great lineup as far as our guests. We were going a little bit of a different direction. It was like kind of like a VidCon, TwitchCon meets RPG community, RPG convention. And we had like, I want to say at the time we were planning it, we had like almost all the big YouTube names, minus like the cartoon people, the animators, right? And we still had like some animators coming as well. And then we had a bunch of streamers and podcasters and Like Gashlanders was going to come from, he's in the UK now. Ginny D and Satine Phoenix, they were like going to be our ambassadors. And then we had tons of people. And the other thing was like we're trying to get like the guests all like do at least one public game where people could like sign up and maybe play.
Sure.
So yeah, and we wanted to do something a little bit different. I think your con was the same way where you guys don't charge for the games.
Right. Yeah. It's once you have your badge, everything's free to do or play. There's signups. You have to. You may not get into a game, but if you do, it doesn't cost anything extra.
Yeah, we wanted to do the same thing. Like, I don't know. It's a pet peeve of mine. Is the conventions where you pay for the badge, you get there, and then you get charged to be in a game with a volunteer DM.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
and one of the things that like what we focused on is like if you go to GenCon, you can sign up to run games, and you can get a free badge. If you run enough games, you can get free hotel, and you can get everything paid for. And I completely understand that. For some people, that's the only way they can go. But what I have seen personally is that incentivizes larger games. Because if I have to run so many player hours, if I run a game with 8 people, then that's twice as good for me than if I run 2 games for 4 people. And I personally like smaller games. Like I would rather play in a game with 3 or 4 of the people max. So I don't like going into games that have 8 people. So we've sort of done things a little bit differently. In our convention, the maximum table size is 5 unless you ask for a specific exemption. Like we want our table sizes to be small because I personally like that better. There's no incentive to run in a game for 7 people versus for 2 people.
Yeah, I agree. Like I had been hired to do this corporate thing, and like I didn't really have all the details going in, but they're like, I knew what they were paying me, and they were paying me really well.
Nice.
So I was like, you want me to run this for like 6 to 8 people? And it was like a really short time. It was either hour and a half or 2 hours. I think it was 2 hours. I was like, that's too many, 4 or 5 tops, or they're not going to get their experience. Yeah, they're going to get a crummy experience. I didn't realize it was like a full on corporate event where it was just like, it was weird because it was literally happening during work for some people. Like one of my players is like, I might have to go because I'm like working right now. Like they were doing customer service.
Oh wow, yeah,
and they did towards the very end. So it's like, so this company would do like, they were trying something new with D&D, but they would do like cooking nights or whatever, just like different events. And you just sign up if you were part of that corporation, and you could just jump into like these social things.
That sounds kind of cool, though. I like that as a concept.
Oh, yeah. It was definitely cool. But a lot of that wasn't explained going in. So, like I was figuring out, I was like, oh, so like I might actually get a player that's never even played the game before and has no idea what it is.
Yep. Yeah, that's you can run in conventions or just even being a for-hire DM in various circumstances. Comes with a unique set of
challenges.
Yes. Yeah.
And with it being, virtual and everything, that makes it even more difficult.
Because then you have technical issues and, and I had gone virtual even before. I think we were talking before we went live. I moved last year. So I moved away from my existing play group, and I already had a large play group from the podcast. Like I've had players at, California and New York. So I've always, for a long time, I've been playing some games virtual. Since I moved away from my current group, I've just been doing virtual anyway. So I didn't look for a game group where I live now. I just continue to play online with the same people I played with before up in Cincinnati. So I've been doing the virtual thing for a while, and I rather like it. It's different. There's pluses and minuses, but the fact that you can just sort of like, hey, it's 7:00. Anybody free right now? Yeah. No one has to like drive to my house. No one has to like pay for a babysitter. I've actually found I can get more gaming in than before when you have like a broader scope of people you can draw from.
No, that's absolutely true. And the best part though is people will still show up to your game late.
Yeah.
Like no one's going anywhere. No one's doing anything. But they still show up to your game late.
It's like, where were you at? I was in the bathroom.
Over there.
I was over there, yeah.
Yeah, although, 2020 has done weird things with time dilation and just like, it's like every month is like 3 months.
It definitely feels so weird. Sometimes you think back like what happened early in the year and you're like, that feels like 5 years ago. Like
Yeah.
legitimately that feels like something that happened 2015, but it was 7 months ago or 8 months ago.
So, what are some of the recent things you guys are talking about on your podcast? Do you guys bring on guests or?
Yeah, we do a show called Show and Tell, and those are our like RPG designer interviews. Usually, those are connected to Kickstarters. Not always, but most of the time.
Yeah,
So, like
nowadays, I imagine, more so.
yeah, and there's no lack of people who want to talk about their Kickstarter. So it's kind of an easy ask to be like, "Hey, you want to come on our podcast and talk for an hour?" So
Yeah.
we recently did the Stargate RPG one, which I'm not really a Stargate. Like I liked the movie, but I never really watched the show. But I actually really liked that because I edit them now. I don't do the interviews. Tom does all the interviews now. So I'm editing. I actually stopped editing and went back that Kickstarter because like this sounds really cool.
Oh, nice.
So I really like some of the things that they did. We do. We've kind of got into doing reviews because we've always talked about things we like, but now we specifically have a list of shows that we review stuff.
Yeah.
And I was able to weasel my way onto the WotC press list. So I've been getting all the new Wizards of the Coast hardbacks. So we just released Tasha's Culture of Everything 2 days ago. We do Detention. Those are our live show every other Wednesday night. I do a live talk show, kind of like what we're doing now. It's a little bit more structured.
Yeah.
Like we have segments. We also do some improv games. Badly, I like to say, because I'm terrible at the improv games. But that seems to be what people like watching us do, is doing improv badly. And then we have a live streamed 5e game called Ghosts of Saltmarsh that Tom runs on the other alternating Wednesday. So we have a whole bunch of stuff going on. If you like RPGs at all, there's probably something we do that would interest you. We have a film studies show that Calum runs for us where we watch a movie and then we talk about like how we could take that scene and make it into an RPG, or what RPG would be good for emulating that particular movie. So there's just our podcast listing. If you look at it, it's almost like a junkyard or a flea market. There's just stuff everywhere. It doesn't always make sense, but hopefully somewhere in there something you can enjoy.
Do you guys also have a network?
We used to.
Okay.
Yeah, we had the RPG Academy Network for several years, and about 2 years ago now, I sort of disbanded that. It wasn't quite doing what I wanted it to do for people. Because that was the goal, is that people would come on. Because at the time, every show we had brought on, we were by far the biggest show. We had the largest audience, we had the most interaction, the largest Twitter following. And I was like wanting to help promote those other shows. And honestly, they weren't getting a big bump from us. And a couple of shows had been, I'll use the terminology here. There were shows that either had joined us and then ended up leaving to go to other networks that actually did have support and resources to help them grow. Or there were a couple of shows we were talking to, and instead of coming to us, they went to them instead. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want anybody to feel like they can't seek better opportunities.
Yeah.
We weren't providing the service I wanted to provide. And it was also a lot of work and stress. So we sort of disbanded. Everyone went on their own way. We're still friends with everybody, but several shows within like weeks were on other more popular networks. So I have good taste in shows. I just wasn't able to do enough for them to make it worth them sticking around.
It's not easy. And it only gets harder as we compete more and more for attention.
Yeah.
There's only so much time in the day. I think that's really the tough part about streaming and even actual play podcasts, because like the time investment is 3-4 hours in chunks, right? So where like us, our videos tend to be rather short in comparison, right? And I personally, as a viewer, when I'm looking at RPG videos, I generally only watch ones that are short. Because like Guy is my favorite from How to Be a Great GM. But I'll look and be like, screw you, Guy. I don't got 30 minutes for this.
Yeah, it's so hard to try to figure out, I mean, just the streaming thing, like what's going to connect with people, because I've always been it's, like the way I GM is very kind of loosey goosey. I'm more focused on story. I don't care that much about rules. And I try to have, I play into my strengths. I think I'm a fairly likable guy. I can be funny at times, but, I don't necessarily come across as super professional. I'm not like unprofessional, but it's like folksy and, like down to earthy style. So like when I do a review on YouTube, you're not going to get a lot of graphics. you're just going to get me talking for 10 minutes about a game and whether I like it or not, you know? So I don't have like the little pop-ups and, you know, my thumbnails are not super creative. They're just the title. And it just, I don't know. I think a lot of people are attracted to those and then they stick around for content. And I like to think that if people will watch my stuff or listen to my stuff, they'll probably connect, but I can't seem to get a lot of people to come check us out first because we're kind of lower on the totem pole as far as the extra bells and whistles.
Yeah, I mean, I often say if we would have started today, we would not have stood a chance. It's because we came in early and we were able to grow into the space.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot easier because, I mean, you know, especially now, but even before, you'll get people, they want professional, you know, grade production for something that doesn't pay very much.
Oh, or at all, you know.
Well, there's that too.
Yeah, because I was on the track to getting paid advertising to YouTube, but then they changed things a few years ago. So I have like right under 600 subscribers. So nothing I put on YouTube has ever generated money because I think you have to be 1,000 or more at this point.
It's 1,000 and 4,000 watch hours.
Right.
Like, so when we started, like that wasn't even a thing.
Right.
And then, you know, and then we started this channel for the long form content. So now we're going through the process, right? And we're like 100 and some away from the 1,000 subscribers. But on the watch hours, because it's long form content, we hit that like within the first month or two.
So yeah, I'd love to get paid for my YouTube stuff, but I'm not willing to change it to what I need to get people to come because it's not important enough to me because it's like, this isn't what I'm trying to do to make a living. So I put stuff on YouTube that I want to put on YouTube. And if 8 people watch it, I consider that a win.
It's also a much younger demographic.
Yeah. My kids, I have a 9 and 10-year-old and they spend so much time on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I watch the people that they're attracted to, like, and I'm just not that personality. Like, I'm just not that bombastic.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I like to tell jokes like to be funny, but like everyone they watch, they're like, what? Like everything is, oh my God, did you see that? I just took
and you have to talk
forward.
really, really fast.
Yeah. And that's just not, so I realize I'm not the type of personality that's going to do that and have 100,000 subscribers. So, you know, reasonable expectations. But thank you, Thomas. It sounds like they just subscribed either to both of us or one of us. I'm not sure. But either way, thank you. Awesome,
Thomas. But so like, I really enjoy watching the younger generation of YouTubers coming up, to be honest with you. Like I had a Dan on last week, and I think he's this kid from Argentina that does like 30 to 60 minute animated videos, and Crit Crab just rips Reddit bad stories and puts graphics up and does them. Who's like a 19-year-old kid that started a YouTube channel in a van. Oh, and wow. He told me how many, and I looked and saw how many views he was getting a month, and I'm like, wow, this kid's making bank, and he's 19 and he was just living in a van.
Oh yeah, you know, some of the people that my kids watch, they're like 6 or 7 people. Generally they're guys, not always, but most of the time. And they like live in a house together. Like they bought like this giant freaking house. And they just play games in it. Like they play tag and hide and seek. And they have like this whole, almost like a warehouse space where they've built these like big obstacle courses that they go through. And that's basically what they do.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that would be great. If I was 20 years old,
oh man,
that would be amazing. But I'm 45. I'm married. I got kids. That's just not in my future, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, we're pretty much the same age. Jacob from XP to level 3, like he's had like one job. Will from Encounter Roleplay, I think, never worked a job, like a regular job, right? Not that this doesn't work. So it's always really cool to watch those guys come up, and also they're so much better at it, to be honest. Like intuitively, because like I feel like they grew up with the platform, and they just, you know, one, you know, they are just technically better, and 2, they just understand the platform on an intuitive level that like I had to learn, and it's still not very good at. So
yeah, I completely understand. So Rivers RPG channel asked about the YouTube. So it's the RPG Academy on YouTube. Pretty much everything I do is the RPG Academy.
I know these links in the description. Maybe I missed that one, but I bet one of those other links leads back to it. So
I'm sure something does.
yeah.
And then I guess, again, if you looked, one thing I would like to say, I mentioned the Action 12 Cinema, the RPG I'm hoping to kickstart next year. One of the links I sent you is to a playtest document. So if anybody's interested in checking out the rules and there's a survey at the end or even running it for your home group, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, you want to get into that a little bit and tell us about it?
Yeah, I'd love to. So it's a super rules light RPG. It's called Action 12 Cinema. It started as a joke, and I completely mean that, because I truly believe that the D12 is the best polyhedral. Like
Okay.
I think it's more fun to roll a D12 than any other die. I really do believe that in my heart of hearts. And sadly, not enough games use the D12. So I started this game as a complete joke just to see how many D12s I could force people to roll. And it started off as like 5 D12 was like the standard, like everybody rolled 5 D12s. And but over time, I started like realizing there's actually some fun to be had in this game. So I started kind of cutting back on the silliness and the overboardness, and it's turned into a pretty fun game. It's got a lot of fiasco where basically it's a zero prep game. All you do is there's a process you go through where you create the environment the game will start in. In the Kickstarter versions could be in space. So it's like Action 12 Cinema in space.
Yeah.
So you start by creating the game environment. So like I'll say, okay, David,
Hold on real quick. That should be one of the rules when you run the game. In space or beneath the waves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I might say, okay, Dave, choose an area of the ship that we're going to play in. So you might pick the bridge or the engine room or the mess hall or crew quarters, whatever. So you write out some stuff on a card that's basically, a description of that place. And we do this till we have 5 places. And this is our ship. We have, the brig, we have the engine room, we have the crew quarters, whatever the case may be. Then you create NPCs. And this could be your captain, your janitorial service, your med officer, your sentient AI, whatever the case may be. So you create 5 NPCs, and then you create your characters. So you create your characters after you've already established a lot about the world. Because like as you're creating your ship, if your ship has, for example, like a 10 forward lounge from like Star Trek, that tells me a lot about your ship. You have a big enough crew with enough time off that they need a place to go hang out. If you have a cryo sleep center, then pretty much, if you go through deep space, everybody's in cryo sleep. So there is no free time. So anyways, so you create your players after you've created those. And then at that point, it's basically just an improv game where there's a whole bunch of, thank God you're here, Ensign Smith. And you want to try to bring in as many NPCs that other people have to play, as many PCs as possible. So you have these really intricate improv heavy role play scenes. And then you roll some D12s to see if you can solve the problems. The problems are all going to be on cards. It's a GM-less game. So again, there's zero prep. You sit down. I might be the first GM. I'm going to draw a card and it says, oh, we're dealing with space vampires. So then I would like narrate the beginning of the game, talk about like everybody's doing this, what they're doing. And then, oh my God, space vampires. And then the better you roll on your D12s, you reduce the complication track. And once you get it to 0, you have solved that problem. And then you can draw a new problem, or that can be the end of the game. So it can run in like an hour to 3 hours. It's a one-shot system. There's no advancement. Your characters don't really do a whole lot other than provide you how many D12s you roll based off of what you're doing.
So I see you're like kind of solve some problems for us older gamers. Like nobody's got time for that prep.
Nope. And no one has the GM.
That seems to be a theme for you. Create a game, no prep. Show, no prep. Improv.
Yep. I don't have time for that. And it's just not going to fall in my wheelhouse. So I've leaned into the things that I like. I love role play. I love D12s. And I love bad action movies. So it's like the perfect combination. So again, fingers crossed that there's enough there to actually make it worthy of a Kickstarter in a game. But, we're going to do some art, we're going to do the cards, and then hopefully there'll be other genres. We can do a fantasy pack, a horror pack, a Hallmark Christmas card pack. And then in my perfect world is you would mix and match those cards together, almost like Smash Up, where you take space vampires and, some like horror aspect, and then like some Christmas movie thing, and you mix them all together and you're dealing with all those problems, because that just seems like a really silly and fun game to me.
It also seems like it'd be a good party game. Like this is a way to trick your friends into playing RPGs.
I would say, yeah, I would think, and all you need is a couple D12s, maybe a D6 or two, but and some note cards. So the virtual aspects of how you'd run it online, I have no, like, even though I run a lot of games online, I do everything theater of the mind, so I don't really deal with a lot of the resources. So that's the thing I'd have to figure out. But you can just sit down and play and just start playing without literally just open the box and hand out note cards. You're ready to go.
Friends of ours made one of the best board games you'll never play, probably. So it was like the first game they made called Kobolds, and it uses the D12
Hmm.
for things. And like we met them, we met those guys, Cardboard Fortress, at the first Geek Fest, and we played like play tested their game, and they made like several games since, and which have been successful. But this one has not found the market yet, and it's a really good game. Like they did Resistor, which did well on Kickstarter. They did Laser Riders, which did well on Kickstarter. Which that game is basically Tron Light Cycles as a
Cool.
tabletop.
I'm in.
Yeah, I was like, how? And like they did like the video they did was like a cheesy like 80s like staticky VHS. Like the box set is a VHS
Oh,
box
nice.
set. But when they like showed us that game, I'm like, how is this not already a game?
Hmm.
Like Tron has been around forever. How did
Oh,
people miss this? Um,
nice.
and they also did they turned Centipede, the Atari game. Uh, EDW is it IDW? IDW tapped them to
Okay.
write that
Yeah.
game. Which they did a phenomenal job with. And they may have some other games, but I would really love to see the Kobold game come out, and it does have the D12 love in it.
Oh, nice. I love the D12. So it looks like a couple other people have either jumped in or just now chatting. So again, there should be a link in the description to the playtest packet. So if anybody does want to take a look at the rules, or again, I'd love for people to run games, because so far
Yeah,
I've run maybe 2 or 3 dozen playtests, but I'm always there, even though
yeah,
it's GMless. So I'm always kind of manipulating. I'd be really interested to see is if how would other people run the game, and does it work if I'm not there to help, you know,
yeah.
facilitate.
It's one of those things you need to see, like how well are people able to play the game without you involved.
Right. Because I've never written a game before. And, I've been running games for over 30 years. I've always been like an amateur designer, tweaking this class or making this homebrew race and that kind of thing, homebrew rules. But I've never
Yeah,
sat down and say, this is a game I want people to play at their own table. And it's a challenge to try to do that's in a way that makes sense, but it's also fun and entertaining. And so again, so be gentle, but definitely if anyone does take the time to check it out, I would thank you. But let me know what I could do better, because I have hopes that this will be a real thing in the real world sometime soon.
so you said you kind of did it as a joke, but how exactly did you get started with that?
Uh, so it literally, and if you read like the first page of the book, it used to be called like Randall Clarkberg, which
Yeah.
stood for Michael's ridiculously, overly, and needlessly complex rules light RPG. So I started throwing stuff out on Twitter, like almost like the rules, like this is how this would work and this is how this work. And I was just trying to make it obscenely overcomplicated, because it was like the joke is how can I make it overly complicated but also be a rules light RPG.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm more, because I run a convention. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna run this as a play test. And then I started thinking, well, if people sign up for this and it's terrible, I'm gonna feel bad. So it needs to actually be a game. So then I sat down and like, okay, how can I make this somewhat of a game? And then through that process, I'm like, okay, this would work and this would work, and it's very interactive. And then it changed. The first time I did it, there were parts that didn't work as well and parts that did. And so it literally just started off as like a Twitter joke. And
Yeah.
then I ran a play test, and like, despite how bad this was, people had fun. So let's lean into where the fun came from. And the rules, the actual mechanics were terrible because they were supposed to be terrible. So I was like, well, how can I actually make them fun but still use the D12? So the current version is you have 4 levels of competence based off of what you're trying to do. So if this is something that you should not do at all, but because of the circumstances, you're the only one possible, that's what we currently call out of your depth. And then you have things that you're like, something you should be good at, something you're trained at, and something you're specialized at. So there's like 4 different levels. And depending on what level is, you roll more D12s and you get to keep more of them. And they explode. So if you roll 12s, you get to roll more D12. So basically you're going to be rolling a whole bunch of d12s trying to get high numbers, and then it kind of works like Powered by the Apocalypse, where you have a complete fail, a complete success, and then some middle ground. If you roll okay, you might work towards solving the problem, but you also hurt yourself in the process. And it's what we call a roll then roll game. So you state your intent, like, okay, I want to try to hack into the computer to like space, like open the airlock and send out the space vampires into space. Then you roll to see how well you do, and then you narrate what it looks like. So you don't say you're going to space the vampires. You say you want to try, because if you roll terribly, you might actually make it worse. So then you get to narrate and role play out you failing terribly and like opening the wrong door and letting the space vampires into the bridge rather than trying to shoot them into space. So yeah, again, I'm terrible at explaining the game, but I'm very excited about it. Hopefully that's coming through.
No, that's great. Like, and like the accident, kind of like the accidental way you created it is probably the only way I would create a game, to be honest with you. Because people have asked us, like, are you gonna ever do your own RPG? I'm like, why? There's so many good ones.
Right.
why do you want me to add a crappy one to all these good ones?
Right. Now, again, I would never create something that's like a 5e killer or like the next Pathfinder, because that's just not going to happen. But a fun 2-3 hour GM-less, no improv or no prep improv game, I might have something there I could add.
You might be into the next Paizo Wizards. I don't know.
I don't think so. I'm definitely more of an indie creator. Like, even if like the Kickstarter, if it went exceptionally well, I still think like maybe 10 grand. Like, to me, that would, I have no, like, we haven't done any of the budget yet, so I don't even know what we would need to be successful. But like, if I have an RPG Kickstarter hits 10 grand, I'm going to be ecstatic.
Oh yeah, I think you guys could do better than that. It sounds like fun. It sounds like a good time. Let us know when you launch it for sure.
Well, Doug mentioned maybe I could run it for you sometime.
Yeah, that would be fun. Although it doesn't sound like we need you to run it. Like, we could just run it because you're like, hey, I want to see how this works, but other people do it.
Yeah, or I could come on and just be a player, not a GM.
So, but you said it's GM-less, right? So there isn't really.
Yeah. So this is one of the vernaculars I don't understand. Is it's shared GMing? So no one is the GM, but like everyone gets to GM at some point. But the GMing is such a light thing. All you really do is introduce the complication. Because at that point, it's just a free for all. Everybody gets to improv, and you can call NPCs in and call other PCs in. And then the GM's just there if there's a disagreement. Like if someone says, oh, this is something I'm supposed to be trained for, so I should get to roll the most D12s. And other people are like, this isn't something you're specialized in. It should be more this. Then the GM is the arbiter to say which is what it is. But really, the GM doesn't do anything. Once they've introduced the complication, it's just an improv free for all.
Okay. It also might be fun as a stream game because you can, like, in real time ask people, hey, what genre do you want us to play?
And you can throw out like character concepts and like relationship ideas, and that's part of the game too. You decide like who you have a positive relationship with, who you have a contentious relationship with, personality traits. So there's definitely some like fate high concept sort of descriptions of characters. And so I really do refer to it as fate meets fiasco meets improv with a D12 on top. It's like a little cherry.
It sounds like fun. I'm looking forward to see what happens with that. So what games are you playing nowadays?
So we have a Discord, and again, I throw it out if anybody's interested in joining, where I run just about every week something. Sometimes holidays and other things I skip a week, but this week I'm running Monster of the Week. Recently I've run Tales from the Loop, the old Marvel Face Rip game, which is a favorite of mine. I run that quite a lot. I was going to run Dungeon Crawl Classics, and then someone else who's actually better at it said, how about I run this one? So they ran that for me. So I've been trying to go back and run a bunch of games that I haven't played a whole lot, because I have that, the shelf of shame. I've backed so many Kickstarters that never see the light of day. So I made a list of all the games I wanted to run for our Looking for Games channel on our Discord, and people just started signing up for the one they wanted. And then basically whichever one got the most votes, that goes to the top of the list. I'll run it next, and then I've been cycling through those games. I love 5e, still my favorite game. I absolutely love Dungeons & Dragons. It's my first RPG. I will always love it, but I play a lot of it. So I'm trying to run things that I don't get to play a lot of. So says the Monster of the Week is this week. I don't know what's next, but it'll probably be something along those lines. I think I'm getting the new Cortex, Sentinels of the Multiverse are
Yeah.
superhero RPG. My Kickstarter should be coming soon, so that'll be on the list soon. Probably Marvel Face Rip again. Maybe Fantasy Flight Star Wars. That's a game I've played a couple times, but I don't think I've ever ran it. This new Star Trek game, I ran a one shot of that. Anything that has like a quick start that I have, that's all I do. Like I just run the quick start. I don't, I'm not good enough to run a really good game, but like just trying to introduce people to the rules and try it out.
Are you excited for Cortex?
Sort of.
Sort
I
of.
don't think I'm smart enough to run Cortex. Like I've tried to run a couple Cortex games, and just reading the book, it just doesn't make sense to me. And then recently we did a trial, and that's where we tried a game I've never played before for the old Marvel Cortex game, Marvel Heroes, and Mark Meredith, who's kind of an expert at that game, ran it for me, and it actually made sense. Like when I'm playing it, it makes sense. I don't know if I could translate it to running the game, but I really like the Sentinels card game. I think if someone else ran it, probably would be more fun. So I'm interested in trying it out. The Cortex Prime looks interesting. I like Cam Banks as a designer. I think he's a good guy. I like to support what he does, but I just don't know if I'm smart enough to run that game well.
Well, I will say I started reading through it, and it is like as simple as like kind of like a Fate Accelerate game, or as complex as you want to make it. Because it's very like modular, where you have components you can move in and out of the game, and like part of Cortex is, and I haven't played it yet. I just started reading through, but part of the game seems to me is like you assemble the game you want to play. If you're not doing like a pre-made campaign already of it, if you're just using the generic rules, but eventually they'll have the digital tool set out where like it'll make the game for you and like plug everything in. So I'm kind of excited to see what that looks like.
There's another game I'm tinkering with. It's nowhere near ready to do anything with, and it's actually got some Cortex elements to it, but it's simpler than what my Cortex experience was. But one of the things I really liked about the Marvel game was the Doom pool. So sometimes when you roll things that aren't great, the DM actually gets more dice that they physically get to add to a pool of dice in front of them, and then they get to use those dice against you. And I actually really like that. So in that the game I'm working on tinkering with now, something similar happens. It also features D12s heavily because D12s are the best die.
So kind of like 10 Candles.
I've only played 10 Candles once, and I don't remember that aspect.
So I have not actually played it, but we had the creator on and explained it to me. It was fairly easy. Like you start with a die pool of 10, and every time, and then for the scene, and every time you go to a new scene, you snuff out a candle, and they take a die away, and then the GM gets to roll that die against you and can cancel out your stuff. But as the game goes on, your pool keeps shrinking, and it's kind of like eventually your pool, the GM's pool is so much bigger than yours.
Right. The time I played it, I don't think we went that way, or I just don't remember. We also only played 6 candles because we didn't have 10 candles. And we played it at GenCon in a murder basement of this Airbnb. So it was like this really creepy basement. And so we actually only played by candlelight. But I don't remember that aspect of it. But in my version, it's sort of like a poker theme. So whenever you add dice to me, I get to use them against you. I can make my monsters tougher or re-roll them. Or you can call for a showdown where you roll just against me. So like say you're fighting a dragon, normally you have to roll like a really good roll to beat. You can just call for a showdown, and I take so many dice out of the pool and roll against you. As long as you beat me, you win.
So do you prefer running games or playing?
I prefer running games. I absolutely love DMing. Though like every now and then I get burnt out. I think everyone does. And so then I like to play a little bit. But no matter how much fun I have playing your game, within 2 or 3 sessions, I'm ready to DM again. I call it recharging my batteries. I absolutely just love that. Shaldor mentions 10 Candles is a perfect horror game. I particularly like Dread. Dread is one of my absolute favorite one-shot games. I run a Scooby Doo Dread game every year at AcadeCon, which is it's like I absolutely love running the game. It's so much fun.
So do you actually have people play the Scooby Doo characters, or is it Scooby Doo style?
No, it's actual Scooby Doo. It's basically Scooby Doo meets Clue the movie.
Yeah.
So in this game, it's been 20 years since Scooby died under somewhat mysterious circumstances,
Uh-huh.
and all the characters are brought back together to finally solve the mystery of who killed Scooby Doo. So it's 10 years after the gang broke up, and Velma is like a profiler for the CIA, and she has or FBI. She has a book called Jinkies: Humans Are the Real Monsters. So she's like this famous
Yeah.
author. Daphne runs her company's businesses. Fred is like this Craven the Hunter type that goes around the world building traps, and Shaggy has some problems with like a mafia and some drug deals gone bad, and they're brought back together to try to solve a mystery. It's very adult, dark humor.
Yeah.
Definitely, things go bad, but it's absolutely one of my favorite games to run.
Poor Shaggy.
Oh, poor Shaggy. He's had it rough.
You have to run that for Matthew Lillard at some point.
Oh my God, that would be so amazing. I would absolutely love that.
That'd be pretty funny.
Yeah. Maybe get with Sarah Michelle Gellar, Freddie Prinze Jr., get the whole gang together. That'd be amazing.
Sure, make it happen. Well, gaming's getting really popular, so who knows? Anything's possible.
That's true. And I actually have a slight in with Matthew. I know one of the people that works with him in Beatles and Grimm, so I might be able to get an email to him. So
make it happen. Make it so.
It's like The Secret. I'm gonna throw it out into the world. I want to run Scooby Doo Dread for Matthew Lillard.
Yeah, that would be a great stream game. Maybe make it a charity stream. Then it's like a lot easier to get more high profile people in.
True, but it goes to some really dark places. That's the only problem is you don't want to have a bunch of kids watching like Shaggy ODs in the bathroom with a dirty needle.
Well, you can donate to kids. It doesn't have to be for kids.
For kids, true enough. Yeah.
Then you can hit them with "Why do you hate kids? Why won't you play my game?"
Oh, that would be great too.
Yeah. So has the pandemic affected your gaming at all? But you'd already been kind of virtual, so
if anything, I actually think I'm gaming more now, just because so many people are quote unquote stuck at home, or they're quarantining. They're not going out and doing other things. Like I don't have kids soccer games. I don't have school recitals. I don't have plays at school. So in some ways, it's actually.
So what I'm hearing is not all bad.
It's really, really bad, but there are some silver linings in those clouds if you look for them.
I've sat through a few recitals myself, so they can be brutal.
They can be. My kid, my oldest kid, is in theater. He's done a couple of community plays up in Cincinnati. He joined the school play, but then it got canceled because of the quarantine. But yeah, so my youngest plays soccer, so I definitely was going to soccer on Saturdays, going to practice in between. So I literally have more free time now than I did before. But there's also, in truth, there's a lot of stress level. So sometimes people are just like, I need a release, but I don't feel like having fun tonight because it feels weird to have fun in this. But end of the day, I think I'm playing more now than I was before.
Yeah, I think there's more availability with more people around to kind of come hang out and play games. Like, even just like people that aren't too impacted and they're like working from home. Like maybe they had a commute before that they don't have now, and they've just like gained all this extra time from that. And like gaming online, one of the great things is like, we would game in person, and I would drive 20, 30 minutes to Ted's house, each way. Now I just go down the stairs to my computer, we sit down and play the game.
Yeah, again, the fact that there's no commute, because again, my home game up in Cincinnati, some people were driving 40 minutes. And often they would come after work because we would play during the week on a weeknight. So they got off work, they'd drive up there, they'd pick up food. So everybody would come in, and usually the first half hour to an hour was everyone eating and then catching up socially, like what's been going on. And then we start playing. We only play for like 2 hours, maybe 3, because then people have to get home because they got work the next day.
Yeah.
So now it's like, hey, you guys want to play at 7? And we can actually play like 4 hours of actual play time. It's not all bad.
Yeah, you save time by not having to stop to put on pants. There's all these things.
Yeah, I'm not wearing pants right now.
It's like 2020, the year everyone gave up pants.
Yeah. I just wish I would have invested in Zoom beforehand, because like now everyone knows about Zoom. Everyone uses Zoom.
It was this whole pandemic is a conspiracy between Roll20 and Zoom to take over the world.
That makes more sense than some of the theories I've heard about this, but we won't go into that.
Yeah. So we're like running a game now, kind of inspired by 2020 on our channel, with Cypher System.
Is it called Trash Fire, the game?
That would be appropriate. So it's kind of like Thundar the Barbarian meets Flash Gordon, with a sprinkle of 2020 in there.
I
So
like
it's,
two of those things.
yeah, yeah.
Quite a lot, yeah.
So it's like post-apocalyptic science fantasy, and and also I don't know what inspired it. I was just like, I was gonna run something. I was like, I don't really want to run any more D&D. I played a lot of D&D. I was like, let's do something with Cypher System, and and that sprung into my mind. So I just did a quick write up and sent it out to the group. Like, you guys, any interest in playing this?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, this sounds like so much fun. I'm like, cool, let's do it.
Yeah. So I've played a little bit of Cypher System, more Numenera than Cypher as a generic system, and I like it. I like a lot about it, but it just doesn't. Something doesn't quite click. Like when you tell me about it, I'm like, that's cool, that's cool. I like that, I like that. But when I play,
Yeah.
it's like this is okay. It's not like it's bad. I've had some really fun times playing Cypher, but it's also not a game that like I'm constantly wanting to go back and play. Maybe I just haven't had the right experience with it yet.
Yeah, I mean, before that, we'd played a couple times. Like, we had done and it's probably up on our channel someplace. We had done a Shadowrun game, but we used Cypher System instead of Shadowrun.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and I had done like some one-offs, with it, but also like we're not really we're kind of rules light to begin with, and I'm very loosey goosey with the rules, and I feel like a system like that lends to it anyway.
Yeah.
So, and like one of the things we did for the stream was like with the GM Intrusions, I was like, hey guys, can I just do this without your permission? And you guys will just get the XP. And they're like, sure, we'll do that. Because I figured, I was like, us going back and forth and negotiating on the stream probably wouldn't be great content.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, I played with a bunch of these folks for a while, so they kind of trust me to not abuse them.
Yeah, actually, I think GM Intrusions is probably one of the parts of that game that I really, really enjoy. Because as someone who's been gaming for a long time, I started playing when I was 12. I was a terrible DM for like 20 years, just awful at it. And one of the things I always struggled with is I need this thing to happen for my plot. Because I used to have plots. There was a time when I did that. Now I don't do that anymore. But
once upon a time. Yeah.
Once upon a time. And I'm like, how do I manipulate everything so that it seems like this is just what happened? Because I don't want the players to feel like I'm forcing them here, but I need this to happen. And I love GM Intrusions just be like, how about you all are just captured now? How's that sound? Okay, great. Because I wanted to do a prison break. So let's just, you can really get through that. And it's codified into the rules. Everyone kind of expects it. There's a little bit of a reward to the players for saying, okay, yeah. And, they should want to do that anyways, because they know that's where the game is supposed to go. So I kind of feel like it's a very simple but rewarding system to let the DM have a little bit of DM fiat to say, this is what I think would be great right now. Let's say that your bus breaks down. I know you're in the middle of the swamp and it's really spooky and Scooby's hungry and you're out of Scooby snacks, but let's just say your bus breaks down right next to this old mansion. Because if not, this is going to be a road trip Scooby game rather than an explore the haunted mansion Scooby game. I just really like that.
Yeah, so I actually just run my games like that anyway, because for the reasons that you mentioned, right? One, like, I mean, I probably, in the earlier years spent like all this time doing these mental gymnastics, trying to get them to do what I want to do to make the thing happen. And like, that's never satisfying for anybody.
Right.
But I think as a GM, you're just better off going, you wake up, you're in a cell.
Yep.
And then we'll figure out how you got there, kind of.
Yeah. That's what I do now. If I'm playing a game like D&D is I in my mind, I consider that kind of like improv and like the setup.
Yeah.
So like if we're playing improv, we'll say, okay, give us a profession. Okay. You're an astronaut and I'm a school teacher and we're on the bus. It's on fire. Go. And once you say go, you've lost control of the improv. It's now the actors and the performer's job to make that scene work. But as the person facilitating, you can do the setup. You can decide you're the astronaut, you're the housewife, you're in a bus, it's on fire. So I kind of rolled that into how I run games. Is I'll just start off and say, okay, you were on a bus, it broke down, you're next to the spooky house, go. Once I say go, I try not to, overly influence the game anymore. I just roll with the punches. But whatever I want to have happen, that's just part of the setup before I say go. And I don't really give the players a chance to like, well, can I fix the bus? Or I don't want on that bus. I wanted to get into this car. Like, no, you're on a bus. It's broke down next to spooky house. Go.
Yeah.
I just find that so much easier.
Yeah, and it's more fulfilling and satisfying, and very rarely will your players even question it. Like if you do that, but if you like go through all these mental gymnastics, and it makes it so hard to happen anyway. And like, I ran an adventure called Valhalla Awaits, and it was for 5e, and I'm like, it starts with and you need to describe how your character dies, right? And that's how we're going to start the game because that's the only way to get to Valhalla. And so like the premise is everyone has these questionable lives that, they may or may not be able to get into Valhalla. So they end up in this like middle ground, the Viking purgatory, where they have to kind of like, do some quests in order to make it to Valhalla. And I know like Ted years ago had wanted to run Ghost Walk, but he's like, I want to, and for anyone who doesn't know, it was like basically playing undead in D&D. But he's like, I wanted to start it off and have everyone die, and then they awaken as spirits or ghosts. And it just went very terrible. Because at a certain point, like, they know you're just trying to murder them.
Right.
Where, now I think Ted would be like, hey, I want to start this campaign. I want to start it with this scenario, and I want you guys to all describe how you die in this scenario. And then we're going to start the game from there. And, like, I think, like people can get behind that. Like, when you give them agency to do a certain thing, or you just say like, no, this is how we're doing it. I'm not going to railroad you to force you into anything. This is just how we're starting. Then like it feels organic and okay for them because they can make choices and the choices matter.
Right. I think, the way I would kind of function is like, if you tell me, how do I want to explain this? You're right. I don't think I'm going to add anything there. That if you tell them this is the scenario, then you're putting a box around it. They can do whatever they want inside that box, but they can't go outside the box. I think that's fun. Again, almost like an improv exercise. Like, okay, within your rules, how cool can I make my story? I know I have to die at the end of it, but anything else I want to create, I can create. I just think that's more fun than trying to start the game and manipulating things so that they die. Because as soon as players realize that's what you're trying to do, I feel like they're going to try to push against those boundaries.
Yeah.
But if you just say you have to die, but you get to tell the coolest story you can think of about how your character dies, then you're making it fun for me to die, not something I'm trying to keep from happening.
It's not. It doesn't feel like you're penalizing them.
Mm.
Yeah, it's all about like most of this game and this experience is about just setting the right expectations.
Ding, 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 right there. And that's something I didn't understand for a very long time. I felt
none of us did.
my job was like the Wizard of Oz. Don't look behind the curtain. Everything's supposed to, You're supposed to think everything is exactly the way it's presented, and I'm not doing any manipulations. And if it works, if you're really good at that, you can create some amazing experiences. But I'm not that good, and frankly, most people probably aren't. So that you start to see the seams, and once you start to see the seams, it can come unraveled. So I just think it's so much easier just to start with, this is the situation. Let's go from there, and it's just more fun in my experience overall.
Oh my god! Especially in Dungeons and Dragons, when I heard someone say, "Hey, it doesn't have to be your job to get the party together. Ask them why they're together." I was like, what? My mind was blown 20 years into the hobby or so. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's part of every 5e game we start with is like, hey, create your characters. Now you have to tell me how you know them. They have to tell me how they know you. You have to tell me how they know that person. And we all go around, and before we start the game, you're already connected. You already know each other. There's a reason why you're on this quest. That has made my life so much easier when it comes to DMing, because that was always the hardest thing. Like, you're in a tavern, it's attack. So now you're all fast friends because you fought this thing, but you don't have any characters that make sense together. So why would you stay together after? It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Or like, I just remember like players sitting there and waiting for their character to be introduced. I'm like, this isn't fun. Like anytime. So if someone's ever like, and we're going to get the party together, I'm like, well, what time do you need me to be there? Because like, I don't feel like watching you guys play for 2 hours.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Have literally done that both as a player and as a DM.
Yes.
I would never do it again.
Well, these are the little things we learn from experience. Some of us learn it faster than others, but learn it we did.
And if you're a player, let your DM know, because we may not realize, like, we think we're presenting this amazing experience, and we may not realize that one player is like bored senseless for 2 hours if they don't say anything. So, you don't learn if you don't get feedback.
Yeah. Or going off and like, you get a new player. Yeah, go take the stack of books over there and make your character. I'll see you in 2 hours.
Yeah, see you in 2 hours.
Yeah, things have changed quite a bit. Like I said, we're about the same age. Probably started playing when you're young, like I did, and
I was around 12.
Yeah, yep, same. I was introduced earlier, but I didn't really start playing until my tweens, and it's like, it was so much different. You just like show up at the dungeon, you'd start at the door, you go in, you kill some monsters, take their stuff.
Yep.
You didn't know why 6 kobolds lived down the hall from the troll.
Why they lived next to a giant and they never talked to each other, or why this room had lava sharks and this room was a mushroom forest.
Yeah, the good old days.
Yep, good old days. Which actually, I have a theory that Numenera is just trying to bring back those Gygaxian style dungeons, but make them make sense, because it's all Numenera, which it's fine. But every time I play Numenera, I'm like, this is just an excuse for a Gygaxian dungeon to make sense.
Yeah, for us, I mean, if we have 2-3 counters in a session that are combat, it's like devastating to our party because we're just not used to doing that much fighting.
Yeah, if we go a whole session and no one rolls a die, I count that as a win. Not every time. Sometimes you gotta bring some dice in, but I totally am fine with a 3-hour role play session every now and then. Those are some of my favorite moments.
I think for us, the balance is like 1 combat per session. Is where our group has landed.
And sometimes it could be at the beginning, sometimes at the end, sometimes in the middle. It just kind of depends on pacing and structure and everything. But I think one good one that means something is great. And I kind of go by the philosophy. I believe that the decision to go into the combat is as important as any decision you would make once you're in combat. Like, I don't want it to just be like, okay, here's the fight. I want it to be, we're on a secret mission. No one can know what we're doing. These innocent guards think that we're working against the kingdom's interest.
Yeah.
Do you fight these guards? Because they're on your side. But if you don't
in theory,
go, if they go away, then your whole mission could be blown. Like, I love that sort of gray area. What do we do? And maybe you don't fight. Maybe you just try to tell them, hey, we're on the secret mission. If you blow our cover, you're going to cause problems. Or maybe you have to kill innocent people or maybe not kill them, maybe knock them unconscious. It's a fantasy game. You can do whatever you want. But do you fight with people who are on your side for the greater good? I like those gray area decisions people have.
You don't need fights in combat, but you do need drama and tension, right? So that's basically what it is. Like, something has to happen, but it doesn't actually have to be violence. So there's other ways to do it. So we were just past the hour mark, and that's when we wrap things up. Final thoughts before we head on out?
Thanks for having me. Congratulations on the success of your original channel. Hopefully the second channel will catch up and you'll get into that 1,000+ subscription soon. And I hope to see you at a convention in 2021 somewhere, sometime, maybe.
Someday, hopefully for sure. Thanks for coming on. And enjoy chatting with you. Until next time, everyone, stay nerdy.